Housekeeper takes in 15 millionaires. During Snowstorm, the next morning, 135 cars showed up. Snow was falling thick and heavy over the small mountain town of Ashwick, a place more famous for its pine forests and ski slopes than for wealth or luxury. The storm warnings had been announced for days, but few people expected it to hit with such brutal speed. At the very edge of the town, tucked between two hills, stood a large but aging Victorian inn. It had long since fallen out of use, now maintained only by a single housekeeper, Margaret Halloway, a woman in her late 50s who had dedicated most of her life to serving others. Her husband had passed years ago, and her children lived in other states. She kept the inn clean for the absent owners, earning just enough to cover her modest bills. Margaret never imagined that one night in December would change the entire course of her life. The knock at the door. The snowstorm began earlier than predicted, and by nightfall, visibility was almost zero. The wind howled against the inn's shutters as Margaret stoked the fireplace. She was ready to retreat upstairs with a book when the first knock rattled the heavy wooden door. When she opened it, a group of well-dressed men and women stumbled in, their coats dusted with snow. Their shoes were far too fine for the icy terrain. Italian leather, designer heels, fabrics that screamed wealth. We were driving down from the ridge," one of them stammered. "Our convoy got separated in the storm. Please, ma'am, may we stay here until it clears?" Margaret's first instinct was disbelief. She looked at their polished watches, the kind she'd seen only in magazines. These weren't ordinary travelers. "How many are you?" she asked cautiously. 15, the man replied. "Our vehicles are stuck. We can pay you, of course." Margaret raised a hand. "This place is drafty and old, but it's dry and warm. Come in." Making do, the inn hadn't been prepared for guests in years. The beds were stripped, the kitchen had only a few basics, and Margaret's hands shook as she hurried to make soup from whatever she had in storage. She brewed tea, laid out blankets, and apologized for the humble fare. To her shock, none of the guests complained. They seemed oddly grateful, almost relieved. They introduced themselves only by first names: David, Claire, Jonathan, Sophia, Marcus, Helena. But Margaret noticed the subtle signs: diamond cufflinks, limited edition handbags, bespoke suits. These were not average citizens. These were people used to private jets and penthouse suites. Yet here they sat around her fire, sipping her potato soup as though it were a delicacy. Strange conversations. As the night deepened, Margaret overheard snatches of conversation. Shares dropped after the merger. His yacht in Monaco. Charity gala, 30 million pledged. She realized with growing astonishment that every single one of them was a millionaire, perhaps even a billionaire. What were they doing here, stranded in her forgotten little inn? Eventually, curiosity got the better of her. "If you don't mind me asking," she said, "what brought you all to Ashwick?" They exchanged glances before one woman answered. "We were attending a private retreat, business networking of sorts, but the storm forced us down the wrong road." Another man chuckled. "Fate has a sense of humor, doesn't it? Imagine, a dozen millionaires rescued by a single housekeeper." Margaret flushed, embarrassed, but she smiled. "Wealth or not, Snow doesn't care. Tonight you're just people in need of shelter." A night of reflection. The fire crackled. The storm raged. And slowly, something remarkable happened. These men and women, usually locked in boardrooms and exclusive clubs, found themselves listening to Margaret's stories. She spoke of her late husband, who had been a carpenter. She told them about her children who couldn't visit often. She admitted that the inn, though a new beginning winter melted into spring, and the once-forgotten inn at the edge of Ashwick was reborn. No longer a dusty relic, it had been restored with marble floors, polished oak beams, and suites fit for royalty. But amid the chandeliers and fine carpets, Margaret insisted on one rule: the fireplaces must stay. "People don't come here for gold-plated faucets," she said firmly to the architects. "They come for warmth, for stories, for the feeling of home." And the millionaires listened, because they remembered. The first official guests. The retreat opened quietly. No advertisements, no billboards. Just whispers passed among the world's wealthiest. "There's a place in Ashwick where even billionaires can feel human again." The first official guests weren't corporate titans or celebrities. They were the same 15 millionaires who had knocked on Margaret's door that fateful night. They returned not in private jets or convoys of limousines, but in ordinary cars at Margaret's request. "If you want to stay here," she told them, "you leave the showmanship outside. Here, you're just people." It was a strange condition, but they obeyed. The housekeeper's rules. Margaret laid out her rules with the firmness of a schoolteacher. 1. No assistants, no staff. Guests must carry their own bags, make their own beds, and help in the kitchen. 2. No titles, no business talk. In the retreat, there were no CEOs, investors, or heirs, just first names. 3. One communal dinner. Everyone, no matter their status, sat at the same table each night. 4. No technology after sundown. Phones, tablets, and laptops were collected in a basket by the fire. The rules were met with shock, then laughter. But slowly, the millionaires realized something. Without their shields of power and wealth, they felt lighter. An unexpected visit. News of the retreat spread further than Margaret had expected. One evening, a new group arrived. Not millionaires, but ordinary travelers. A young couple with a broken-down car, a retired teacher on her way to visit family, and a single mother with 2 children. Margaret welcomed them without hesitation, serving her now famous potato soup. The millionaires, at first unsure, soon found themselves talking and laughing with the newcomers. A billionaire investor helped the children build a snowman. A fashion mogul taught the young couple how to cook pasta, like in Milan. And the retired teacher told stories that held the entire room captive. Margaret watched, her heart swelling. She had feared wealth might create walls, but instead, it seemed to crumble them. The storm of attention. By summer, reporters discovered the retreat's secret. Photos circulated online. Billionaires in aprons washing dishes, CEOs playing chess with pensioners, heiresses helping toddlers color. Headlines screamed, "The Housekeeper's Retreat, where millionaires wash their own plates." From penthouse to potato soup, the resort humbling the richest. The world was fascinated. Journalists begged for interviews, tourists lined up at the gates, and investment firms offered to franchise the retreat globally. But Margaret refused. "This is not a brand," she said calmly. "It's a home. If you try to bottle it and sell it, it loses its soul." The millionaires backed her decision. For once, profit wasn't the goal. A challenge emerges. Not everyone was pleased. Competitors in the luxury industry scoffed at the idea. "Who pays thousands to sleep in a drafty old inn and eat soup?" they sneered. But Margaret knew the truth. Her guests weren't paying for luxury. They were paying for honesty, for the chance to strip away masks. Still, pressure mounted. Demand grew. Waiting lists stretched for months. Some millionaires even offered bribes to skip the line. Margaret rejected them all. "You can't buy kindness," she reminded them. "Not here." A heartfelt letter. One autumn evening, Margaret received a handwritten